Bienvenidos de vuelta al Congreso Internacional de Educadores.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the International Congress of Educators. I found you here for this final part of these academic events. And we're going to talk to you now about motivation to continue our contribution towards education. My name is Leonardo Piscoya, and I will be the moderator for this session. To begin this block, I'm very pleased to announce an old acquaintance, Professor Maria Ruskanen. Maria Ruskanen is a specialist in educational services, global educational services by the University of Applied Sciences, Hagla, located in Helsinki, Finland. She's been an advisor in educational policies at the Finnish Embassy in Lima between the years of 2012 and 2020, and a teacher for the UPC between the years of 2020 and 2021. She's a graduate by the University of Turku in Finland, and she has a master's degree in social sciences by the University of Amsterdam, and a master's degree in educational leadership by the University of Applied Sciences of Tampere. She's affiliated to two investigation groups, international investigation groups, focused on education and scientific publications such as e-learning in Peru, habits and attitudes. And currently, she promotes collaboration between institutions in Finland and Latin America, especially in the field of teacher formation for technical and superior education. Today, Professor Ruskanen is going to present a conference titled How to Promote Learning Throughout Life in Finland. It is a pleasure to have you here at the International Congress of Educators. You have the floor. Hey, good afternoon, Leonardo. It is a genuine pleasure to be here in spite of the time difference, which is very great. I appreciate this invitation. And now I'm going to share my screen. Please, I don't want to lose any more time. Let us move to today's subject, because I've eaten about 5 minutes of this presentation minimum. How can we promote learning throughout life, learning through life, lifelong learning, the case of Finland? And for this, I'm going to start with the main objectives of the session. So what I would like is to define the terms learning through life, lifelong learning, and continuous learning, which you will see a difference there. And they're learning throughout life that is very much attached to the former. I come from social sciences, ladies and gentlemen, and I like it very much when I analyze educational policy to see a little bit of the historical background, these concepts and ideas and values related with them as well. And I would like to analyze very briefly the impact that this has had in the Finnish system, and then present examples of how we can learn through life as a main approach and orienting principle of education for adults. Education in adults, it's something that I dedicate my time to. And so this is something where we're going to focus a little bit more. But before that, I want to talk a little bit about Finland. Here you can see the hobby, the Finnish hobby by excellence too is just to get in a lake, to refresh yourself, and then have a lot of energy for the upcoming day. It usually is a very, very dark and cold day. So we do it to energize. So we do this very, very pleasing exercise. For all those who don't know Finland, we speak of a country that is a member of the European Union since 1995. We're very much up north. We're also in a geopolitical position that is quite complicated between Russia and Sweden. This has meant that we've had a very tumultuous history. We've had to fight wars against the Soviet Union. We're going to talk a little bit more about that, and we're going to see how this actually relates with all the history of Finland and how it's related with the educational policies that we see nowadays being carried out. This is a country full of contrasts. We are very cold. I believe everyone knows a cold part. But many of you, I believe, can see this part packed with heat, formidable temperatures. You can see here a girl that is about to enter a lake, and it must be around 11 or 12 in the evening when, believe it or not, the sun sets for a couple of seconds and then it comes up again. It's a magical time in Finland. And the Aurora Borealis, which is one of the attractions in the north, is there too. We also have this very, very interesting high technology combination that has to do with virtually a highly educated people. We have many people that are dedicated, that dedicate themselves to innovation and development, to investigation. We have put together a whole economy based upon that, based upon services of high added value. But at the same time, we've been able to maintain the pure nature of our activities, even though we have activities such as mining, for example, going on in the country. We're able to accomplish this technology that actually allows us to develop different sorts of activities, always related with natural resources, without it disturbing our beautiful nature. So what is the international knowledge that we value the most? There's a number of different pieces of information that we have as family, as society, but the ones that we value the most are the following: the most stable country in the world, the least corrupt country in the world, the most effective educational system. What does it mean with that? What do we mean with that? It means in terms of expenses compared with the results that we accomplish, how are we utilizing the budget? Perhaps it's not the highest percentage of the gross domestic product, the GDP, but every cent is utilized in the best way possible with very, very high results. It's considered the happiest country in the world as a metric that we really enjoy for the third country in a row. And it's one of the most innovative countries with the greatest quality of life and one of the most peaceful ones as well. So I believe it's really easy to get a conclusion that from all these indicators that are so important for us have to do with educational policies, ladies and gentlemen, and educational policies for the long run. Now, was it always the case? Of course not. Finland has a very, very tragic story, a history of war, a history of hunger. We see this now at Harjan work, which is called the burning of the forest in 1983, where we see a girl, a malnourished girl, poor malnourished girl working under these conditions. This is not just a work of fiction, ladies and gentlemen. This was the reality of Finland not that long ago. And then in the 40s, we had to go through the war against the Soviet Union. It's a devastating and we have to defend our territory against the Soviet Union, just a small part of our territory, then be able to remain independent, then try to seek for the reconstruction of the country. Vanessa, could you please go to the previous one? Thank you. The reconstruction meant that the population had to pitch in a lot. We lost a lot of men during the war, and the role of women was actually highlighted here. You can see members of the association, the paramilitary association called Association Noctusgar, where women would actually organize to support the effort of war. And then you can see it in the reconstruction. The couple over there is working together. They're rebuilding the land. The people were actually helping each other rebuild their lands. And this was a beautiful period in Finland. There was a sentiment of a lot of collaboration, a lot of solidarity, which was in itself a miracle. And this was amazing because some years ago, we had a pretty gruesome civil war in Finland. The communists against conservatives. And besides having this tremendous experience, this war against the Soviet Union, we were able to get together, the population, in this tremendous effort, and the country, a pretty clear option what we wanted to accomplish. The country where everyone had the opportunity to participate and everyone had the opportunity to contribute to society and contribute to the economy as well. On this chart, you can see how the economic growth turned out to be. The one that is right below is in Finland. We can see we were at levels per capita that were extremely low, that you can see in the 20s after the Civil War, in the 40s, the effect of the World War, and then a growth that was extremely strong, that for 2000 got us to the level of the most developed countries in the European Union. So we can talk about a transformation that happened in less than 50 years. It was a transformation that was tremendously inspiring, because we're talking about a country that would receive cooperation for the development after the war. We would receive packages of food from different countries, such as the United States. We were a very poor country, that in the 60s we actually began to be a country of medium income with competitive aspects, with a very little labor. The forest is the only raw material that we have in Finland, by the way. And through that, we were able to develop forestry industry. And then the industry obviously represented very, very little value. And there was a lot of export in pulp, in paper pulp. A very little portion of the population had any sort of academic formation. So in the 60s, we were still talking about a marginal country, a country that was falling behind. In 50 years alone, we accomplished this important, and I would say gigantic change. By 2014, we were talking about $37,000, 400 euros per capita. And the competitive factors have actually changed. Knowledge and innovation have changed as well. There's a lot of added value of high productivity. The industrial base is heavily diversified. They dominate services with high added value, and a large part of the population have academic formation. So we can say that in 50 years, we went from being a marginalized country and a country that was falling behind to a country that is right now at the global vanguard. And here is where I would like to talk about the educational system and about a very important occurrence all along this historical track. And it was the educational reform of 1982 until 1987. Here we can see some students from the Benjamin Finkel-Raschler from 1997, the year where we carried out this reform that took about 5 years total. And the important thing about this reform is that it got, in its moment, the support from all the political parties. So as you can see, we actually accomplished a policy of consensus, and this, at least when it comes to education, is very, very much unified. The countries might have some differences on how they want to develop education, but the fundamentals, the pillars in education question after this great reform, where it was pretty much unified. And now this created the system of basic unified education. We differentiated amongst different types of schools. Some of them were for poor people, some of them were for the upper classes. But now we created just a single type of school that is 9 years of study, elementary, and then a middle school or secondary. And then we were done with inspections, and educational quality began to be controlled through initial formation of teachers. All of the education for teachers actually went to the universities, and to the universities that began to have their own department of academic formation. And actually, the teacher's career began to be defined as something that took 5 years of your academic formation. And then with this change, alongside the decentralization policy, where it began to be organized by municipalities, we accomplished 10 to 15 years, a change that is very, very strong in terms of the results of learning, especially in the identity, in the professional identity of the teachers. Now, during this reform, or perhaps a reform is owed also in part to this global trend, to the ideas that began to occur at the end of the 60s and the 70s, and the need for a change in education, disruptive elements presented by important thinkers like Ivan Illich, Pablo Freire, and Everett Kramer. And it's always funny to me when I hear about this part of the thinker, the philosopher, the educational philosopher that has influenced the system so much, that has influenced the system a lot, that is considered the greatest in the world, has actually been a Latino, a Brazilian, a gentleman, Freire. He had a lot of influence in defining what the debates on education were in the faculties of education, how we began to see the issue of learning, and how we began to see relations between teachers and students, and how we began to see active learning, collaborative learning. All of these issues occurred in this era because of the intellectual work of writers such as Freire. And so, in this intense, tumultuous moment, learning through life began to be aligned as a concept with a humanistic vision for the emancipated citizen, democratic citizen. That's sort of like the starting point, how this concept came to be, how this concept was understood in the 70s. And this changed a little bit. I don't know, can you go back, please? Thank you. This changed a little bit in time, and it began to be a little bit more aligned with the concept of the skills for the market, the work market, and it began with this idea of actually education has to stop being a privilege of an elite or an issue of a single group. And instead of that, learning had to be universal and permanent. And a very important publication in this way is the report of Faude, which was published in 1974, Learning to Do, which picks all of these ideas from writers that I just mentioned. And it coins the term education throughout life. It's the first time that the terminology was coined in this sense. Now let us continue. Then there's a change in the paradigm that is quite strong, starting in the 80s. And the concept of education throughout life began to be a little bit more linked with the needs of the work market, of the workplace. There's a study by Dr. Kimberly about this issue, and about how the concept of learning through life was changing after the 60s up until today. There's a very notorious difference in how it began to be conceptualized in the beginning and how it begins to change. And then an issue that influenced a lot, really, was a report from Lours. It's another publication from UNESCO that presents learning through life as the heartbeat of a society that is based on 4 pillars: learn to know, learn to be, learn to live together, and learn to do. And it prepares a learning for a society where all can learn according to the needs and interests and individual interests in any place and any moment, in a free way, in a flexible manner, and in a constructive pattern. And so we see here a little bit more in detail what March is actually telling us. It underlines the individual, and obviously this carries with the conceptualization of the cooperation of economic development, OCDE, to actually emphasize the importance of learning And that's why UNESCO reached the term learning through life, or lifelong learning. That is what we use now in many parts of the world. So we move from education through life to learning through life. And it could be a change, small and insignificant change, but in reality, it has a weight that is very, very strong in terms of ideas and values. And if you're interested in this, I'm gonna ask you to read the Dutch writer Ernst Jesta. He speaks a lot about diversification of education. Sorry, I think in Spanish you say it differently, but basically what it means is that the terms learning begins to take a lot of space in the discourse, in the educational discourse. Should we continue? Yes. And this carries us to today, to the 21st century, actually, how we see learning through life today. And today, when we speak about the Finnish concept, learning through life actually sums up the fact that people learn something good, something new, sorry, every day, in their career, in their free time. However, we have to make a differentiation with continuous learning. Now we're going to see a graph that makes this difference a little bit more clear. Continuous learning for the workplace, for the work life, implies many skills that not necessarily do you have. This type of skills are, for example, the capability to apply knowledge and identify our very own competencies. And these are skills that require practice and require a very strong baseline from early education. And this is pretty much the discourse that we have in Finland in this moment, that there are skills that we have to practice, that we don't have automatically, that we can cultivate from our early stages, and that help us during this task of continuous learning. And these abilities include being aware of the very way in which we learn, and being able to use this knowledge to develop and improve our performance. And so these are actually key in the task that we have to develop our working skills in the future. We need one to be able to develop the other. And in this image, produced by the Finnish Center of Economic Development, Transport and Environment, we can see a little bit more clear this difference. We have the big arch, which would be all the life of a person. We have the first stages of infancy, adolescence, and then we have the adult era. And then finally, we had the moment where we're no longer part of the work life. And then learning obviously occurs throughout all of these processes, throughout all of these moments. But when we speak about continuous learning, we would be focusing mainly in the part where we're actually active in the work life. And this is where we would very much be interested in those institutions and associations that actors that would be interested in the promotion of continuous learning, that are focused in this time, that are focused in informal training, not just informal issues. And we're going to see the difference now. And so lifelong learning is actually a continuous search, a voluntary search, and self-motivated search for knowledge out of personal, professional reasons. It's focused in the development of human potential. Continuous learning would be learning related with work. Adults who have completed their formal education and have incorporated themselves to the work life is focused on improving and retraining the workforce in order to increase the competitiveness levels in the companies and the economy as a whole. So you see there's a pretty strong, severe conceptual differences. As part of the European Union, we follow guidelines and European policy in this sense. So there is a European framework for learning through life that they call permanent learning as well. And this framework identifies 8 key components, which would be literature, multilingual abilities, mathematical and technological abilities, digital abilities, personal, social, and learning, civic ability, and the abilities related with cultural awareness and expression. And according to the framework of the European Union, the key competencies for continuous learning would contribute employability levels, but also social inclusion, and also skills for a sustainable lifestyle and management of life, which is a very, very important life, and also citizenship, active citizenship. On the other hand, skills related with critical thinking, resolution of problems, teamwork, communication and negotiation, analysis and creativity, and intercultural abilities are included in each and every one of these 8 competencies. And if we speak of professional formation, the cooperational culture, and the competencies of the teachers have to support the acquisition of key skills too for learning. So there's a challenge there for the professional formation. So how is it that the Finnish system helps learning through life, lifelong learning? We can highlight 3 main issues here of interest. First off, in the Finnish system, we do not have dead end roads, so a student always can continue his studies in a higher level of education without depending on his previous choices. I want you to understand how important that is. We never, ever close the door to university studies or a doctor's degree over a decision taken at what we would call the second educational level, that we pick in a secondary education or in an institute, in a technical vocational institute. Regardless of the decision that we make among these type of institutions, the door is never going to be closed to us to superior education if we decide that we want to continue going after it. This is something really important, something that learning promotes through life. Also, something that is really promoted is that if we acknowledge previous learning and we seek a necessary predisposition of studies, this goes with technical skills as well. Because if a professional has been working in a position for a certain amount of time, all of this is going to be able to be recognized, and that person is not going to have to be take classes with people that have no idea on the subject that is being discussed, or the sector, or the industry. So there are ways and processes to actually demonstrate everything that we've learned outside of the formal space, for example, working. And finally, we got legislation relative to secondary education, and it stipulates that the providers of education have to promote lifelong learning. So there is an activity from the institutions to actually accomplish this. And then the image that I placed here, it makes an association with a reform, with an educational reform that we lived in 2018 that has to do with education, something that we call vocational education, something that we don't understand perhaps in a big term in the Peruvian context, but it deals with institutes where you can study, either the youth, or we finish secondary education, or people from any age that require professional qualification based upon experience. So they offer titles to professionals. Some of them that take less time to obtain, up to 2 years, 2.5 years, and depending on the level, and they offer an education of very, very high quality technical, professional. It gives people who have graduated in this formation the chance to access immediately to work or to put your own business, to set up your own business in relation to the line of study that you've done. And then we're going with education around life. Here is where you're going to have to keep me on track because I believe that we're a little bit over, but I'm going to continue until they mark me to stop. Education and throughout life complements the previous concept for education throughout life. And it underlines the fact that there's a lot of types of learning for professional development, for personal development that occur throughout life. There's a learning when it comes to formal educational spaces. And one also occurs a lot of learning and development in situations that are informal. And the concept actually includes all of that learning and development that is promoted by our interests and the intrinsic value of those, as well as by our needs and the need that we have to learn as we do our everyday activities and go about our everyday life. And to actually reap the benefits of this type of learning, it is very important to recognize and seize the opportunities that we have as they come and actually have the will and the capability to link ourselves to different experiences, whether it's rewarding trips or events, cultural events, or any form of situation that turns out to be stimulating and could provide added value to our integrated formation. Education throughout life maintains a promise of a way for education that is holistic in nature, where people can actually combine and integrate the learning, both formal and informal, and their personal development or professional development and their accomplishments. And finally, this brings me to the final part that I wanted to touch today, which is education in the grown-ups, education for adults in Finland. We have an approach in life that is very, very important when it comes to adult education. I believe in Finland they have the same idea, the same definition does. Education in adults is that which happens after you have finished your education, independently of which level you got to. You've ended it, and you spent a moment in the work life, and then you took again, in some way, your studies in a formal way or an informal way. Finland has a long story of promotional participation and education. Here we can see the publication for the 100 years of the training center for the Helsinki worker. We see that we're doing some form of activity, perhaps for radio. And education in the grown-ups. Education in the grown-ups have been very popular in terms of the rate of participation. It's still quite high in international terms. And the first center for training was founded in 1989 for construction workers. This is a concept that is a little bit antiquated nowadays. Now we use Center of Formation for Citizens or Center of Formation, but it's still an institution that we find in any village, in any location, even in the smallest one. And it really reflects that dream. The dream had over 100 years ago of a cultivated population, to achieve a cultivated population throughout the country. And now these centers receive public financing under the law to promote educational labor, non-formal educational labor. So there's a law to promote the educational work that is non-formal. And now we're going to see a little bit, let's move forward on this, so I can tell you what I refer to with formal and non-formal education for adults. Here in the middle, you can see the entire Finnish educational system. You can see that it has 3 levels. It's not the secondary education ends like that, and then we go directly with university. There's an intermediate level there. And even though we talk about formal education, we can be talking about general education or vocational education for adults. So this type of education will always provide a title or a type of a qualification. There's always going to be an educational itinerary for adults perhaps that are coursing through secondary education, superior education after many years because they do not get to finish. They will not be able to participate in these classes with the students from 15, 16 years of age, 17 years of age. But instead, they're going to have different times to finish their studies. It would mean something along those lines. When it comes to education and professional formation, we recommend previous qualifications and competencies. There's a number of opportunities to be seized on how to accredit experience, work-related experience, as you can see. Then we go to non-formal education for adults, which has a very important role in the educational system in Finland. So this type of education actually offers non-formal studies. And so it does not give a title, and its contents are not overviewed by legislation, but it does promote personal growth, healthcare, well-being. It offers courses on citizen skills and society, handcrafts, recreational in character. You can go to your formation center and pretty much get anything that you want. You know, there's center of formation for the citizen. There's courses on how to cook, and there's a course that we have in Latin or a flamenco class. Everything being offered by this center, no matter how small it is. And this type of non-formal education is organized by adults and private schools, centers for learning, sports formation, and also universities, summer universities, where you can do these very courses. And all the professionals that are in the career are not going to give you the credits, but you're going to be able to enjoy the same quality. And this is amazing in our system. So you can really observe an ecosystem in Finland, and you can analyze this through the learning lenses, through the learning focus in learning through life. We are adults, we're still learning, and for this, we have a very close sight. Formal education. It could be basic for adults, secondary and superior for adults, vocational institutes, for universities of applied sciences, and universities in general. These are our options when we become apprentices as adults. And then we have the non-formal way, which would be the centers of formation for adults that do not give us a title, but they give us courses of interest, cultural facilities where we can take cultures, different courses related with culture, like languages, sports, courses from our very own union, for constant training in universities in summer. And then we also have the informal space that sometimes is put aside in these discussions. And that's where we speak of the width of life. We have public libraries in the municipalities and the museums too, and these would enter into non-formal education. So they would organize a course in particular or a training in digital literacy. We're entering a formal issue or a curriculum or for a clear structure, some clear learning objectives. But when this does not exist, when there's absolutely no rigid rules, we're talking about informal learning that is very valuable in an educator society. So as I mentioned, we have the museums, the means of communication, the community, family, and all of these is complementary. Thank you. Yes, I'm going to be closing now. We're going to be moving forward with this. And well, this sums up all of the objectives for the Finnish policy of education for adults. And if you're interested a little bit more in Finnish strategies, you can look it up in our think tank called CIE, which is the most important publication in Finland related with educational affairs. It's on a publication about learning that is quite interesting. And here, basically, what they highlight is what are the objectives regarding the policy in Finland, which is to guarantee, obviously, to guarantee the availability and capabilities in the workforce. And this is extremely valuable for them, on the other hand, to provide opportunities, educational opportunities for everybody in the population. So one of the key groups that they utilize in the teaching facilities for the citizens are adults, which are extremely active. I think the most active ones in the world. And then to strengthen social cohesion, citizens that are active are very, very important for the exercise of freedom. And so these objectives have to support the efforts of the government to extend the work life and increase productivity, and increase the conditions for permanent learning, and increase multiculturalism. Moving forward, how do adults learn? This is the last thing that I want to touch on, because I know that this is something that Finland is highlighted on. And when we speak about pedagogy, it is not something that useful. And so in Finland, we spoke about this for the 60s. And how we come to know each other through these concepts. And this actually became something a little bit more massive. And then in 1998, in the Finnish Institute of Business, we began to focus on this area of specialization. And the future of the teachers for superior education were not able to practice and to receive instruction on how to dictate classes for the real students. And nowadays, this theory actually in practice around how we're taught and how the adults learn is continued to be developed in schools of professional formation. And this task, obviously, we've given in the university where I work on. We have a school of professional formation. And our task is to train professionals from different areas, business. And this is where we have to talk about the universities and this is very important for everyone to be the best in the technical level and superior level. All right. And the final one, there's a Finnish reform that is very recent in 2020. And the idea with this reform is to find better alternatives to combine work and studies, and some measures actually have to deal with increasing opportunities for re-professional education. This is actually something that was extremely important in Finland in the past years. The people have actually wanted to have a career, and perhaps they see that they don't have any future because the industry is actually disappearing. They have to re-educate themselves and learn new abilities. And this is something that is being done in a much more precise way. And so that they don't have to do studies so long to actually get a new qualification. Then we seek to develop the formation of students and training so that we can provide new flexible opportunities for them so they can study in the different superior education facilities. So we combine this model and also the work at the companies with studies and develop licenses for study and economic activities for the adult students so that they can look for work. And this is the last one that I wanted to show you, is the OD library. This is a library, a municipal library that This is an amazing library. It's very important. But the most important one factor about it is that it seeks literacy, and it has this concept of learning through life. Odi means ode. So that's a video that I wanted to show you of 1.5 minutes. It's very quick.
No se escucha el audio, pero bueno, les puedo ir explicando entonces lo que estamos viendo.
I don't know if there's audio there. I'm going to describe what we're seeing. We're seeing different spaces there.
Sí, hay una música nada más, no importa.
Now there's just a simple music. There's different spaces for different types of learning. And we have the most traditional ones. And we have spaces too, like this room, for children stimulation. We have this recording room, professional recording room, and you can reserve that. We have augmented reality. We have rooms for video games, the 3D printer as a free tool that you can utilize. Different machines that are so necessary for design, conference rooms, cooking rooms for the next for the courses within the library. So we're talking about a concept of a multiple literacy, and to get to know all of the different abilities that are meant to be developed under a space of this sort that promotes learning throughout life. And that is it. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much, Maria. And actually, it would give us time for you to keep telling us so many things. And we know that you're a specialist. And this is a notion that is very important. And to have a critical panel here, I really appreciate you because I know that you're in a very complicated schedule. And thank you very much. Until the next opportunity. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Leonardo. Thank you very much. And Tilvia has written something in Finnish saying hello. And now I'm going to give pass to our next conference. You already know that you can decide if you're going to stay in this room or you're going to be with the next one, which is conditions to reevaluate hybrid learning, or if you want, you can go to the room A to participate in the discussion panel on recommendations to improve the dynamics through new technologies.